Keep beating the pavement.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.
(1935), the Lions win the NFL championship. The Detroit Tigers take the World Series. The Red Wings bring home Lord Stanley's Cup. Joe Louis begins his rise to world domination. This transforms the Motor City into Detroit, City of Champions.
With the crack of the bat, we are off and running. Detroit, City of Champions, the podcast. Diving deep into the 1935 year, 33 championships. Just some amazing stuff compiled in an amazing collection by
Charles Avison.
Hey, one hell of an author. I love your traveling. The stories of a traveling storyteller. I love those little bits, man.
One of my friends says that's his favorite part of the whole book.
Yeah,
like he's like, dude, you should only just do an entire book on just the tales of a traveling storyteller.
It's just the interesting people that you met.
Yeah, it's I actually at one point I wrote down this. I have this huge piece of paper. It's like, I don't know, 11 by 17. I don't know where I got this huge piece of paper, but I wrote down, I went down year by year and chronicled just like little reminiscences, like about each week. Like I went through, and it's like when I spent like a couple days writing it, I've got hundreds. You know, I did hundreds of art shows. Yeah. I was at every single. You wouldn't imagine the time. I mean, I dedicated myself to telling this story to every person in the state of Michigan with my own mouth. And it was at cider mills. It was at library talks. It was riverfronts, beaches, art shows. I mean, every type of place you can imagine that people were at. And it was like, it was interesting to say the least. I bathed in every Great Lake one summer, and not out of like I say, I didn't go swimming in every lake. I bathed in every.
You're literally. Yes. There's nothing romantic about it. It's just.
It was like
I save a quarter on the shower.
That's how it was. Yeah. So it was interesting.
What was the warmest lake?
Yeah, it really was. It was like
which was the warmest of all five?
I think at the time it was what is it, Lake Huron? Is it the one right next to Michigan?
The one with all the nuclear reactors dumping into it. That was nice and toasty.
Yeah,
that's actually by Sarnia. There was some sort of on the Canadian side. We'd go swimming. The water was like bathwater out there. I was like, this can't be good. They use it for cooling or something. But one of those interesting people you met in your travels was Tom Urich.
Sitting right here in front of us.
Oh yeah, I
hey,
remember
Tom.
it well. And talking to Charles, and we had a little powwow, and I was so excited that I learned about the books and called. They got a hold of his father first.
Oh, that's right. Yep.
Your father told me and gave me your number, and I was so proud because I had a fellow companion that liked the 1935.
Tom was the first person I ever met that was bit by the City of Champions bug, just like I was. Yeah. And it was like it was comforting to know that I wasn't the only person in the entire world that could recognize how amazing a year in which Detroit wins 33 championships in a single year. How interesting that was. Like at the time, I was like about the only person in the world. And to meet Tom, he was the first person I met that was like had been bitten by that bug. And I'd
like to tell the story on how I learned about you. Was Bill Williams, who was a stockbroker at Oppenheimer over in Plymouth. He was 80 years or 83 years old, and he had your book on his desk, and he told me that he went to the 1935 championship game out at Titan Stadium. And
the Lions championship.
The Lions, yep. And he saw the game, and his favorite player was Ernie Cadell.
Nice. Yeah.
But all of his life, when Ernie Cadell wore letter number 1.
Mm. Oh, that's the sweater with that he did. Yeah.
And then they were a very poor family, so his mother made him a 1 and put it on his sweatshirt, and he went to school as Ernie Cadell.
Yeah.
And he had your books, all 3, and I said, well, I've got a tape. I would like to have you hear Ernie Cadell's voice.
Ooh.
And his son told me that when he heard Ernie Cadell's voice, he cried.
Because
he was his idol when he was playing. But, in the 30s, they didn't have the sports center and all the technology. He never heard his voice.
Yeah.
And then when he heard his voice, he said he was just in tears.
Oh.
Yeah.
To hear his actual voice of his hero.
So yeah, and if you go back a few episodes, you'll be able to hear those exact recordings.
Yeah.
We shared a whole lot of those when Tom started joining us.
Got a few more to show too at some point in the future. We got a Charlie Garner interview. I'd like to dive a little deeper into at some point, maybe in the future.
And I'm waiting for Joe Lewis too. That's
that's gonna be fun.
Specialty.
Yeah, that's gonna be fun.
I've known him well and had many conversations with him over the years, and I think the listening audience will appreciate what he told me.
That's one of the big stories of the year was Joe Lewis, along with the Tigers, and then the Lions. And then what we're working through right now, the Red Wings.
Well, this story has got like everything.
Yeah.
Okay. Like when I say for the screenplay for the movie.
Yeah.
Like it's got every component of every great sports movie ever. But these are true stories. And I say this when we mentioned Joe Lewis because one of the classic components of a lot of these sports stories is like the battle against segregation, like the Jackie Robinson story, right? I mean, that's one of these classic sports components. And Joe Lewis was like, I say the Jackie Robinson story before the Jackie Robinson story, because that's the era he's coming of age. And he's going against like this sense of like that no black man will ever get a chance at the heavyweight championship. And so that's just one component. Like the Tigers are like sort of the bad news bears component.
Right.
And there's every single great sports story is wrapped up in the stories of these teams. And that's what I mean. Like when we put it all together for a mini series for like a HBO or Netflix, whatever, this is going to be the greatest sports story ever told on film. And because it's a true story. It's not, Bad News Bears is great, but it's a fictional story. This is real. And so that's what I mean. When you put it all together, you know what I mean? You've got every single component of every great sports story. It's just, like I say, I've already seen it. It's in my head and I can't wait to share it. Until in the meantime, we're going to be talking about it and going into detail, telling people what they can expect, Because
the last two episodes we talked about the roster and some roster changes and how the lineup got solidified, right? And we talked about some of the players.
Yes. And so, we've been talking about the evolution of, like how the NHL and then the Detroit franchise grew and Jack Adams. And then how, entering this season, the roster had to, they realized in 1934-35 that this, if they were going to compete with the likes of especially with the Tigers, but even with the Lions, they had to be competitive. The 35, they're going into 35. They knew that they had to put a real good team together, or they would just become irrelevant. And irrelevancy in sports means is the final kiss of death. And so they knew they had to do something. And so they really started plowing. We talked about the money they were spending on players, the creativity that Jack Adams had in getting players, and also how the minor league team was chipping in players, how they beat the minor league team. The Olympics beat. It was called the Detroit Olympics. They actually beat the parent club, which was the Detroit Red Wings. Which led Adams to look at this minor league team, most certainly saying, this is a team that's got some components. Like, hell, I should just bring the entire minor league team to the majors and just call it a day. But he's got too many.
He brought in Bucko.
Yes. So, but instead he went for the core guys on that minor league team. But so anyway, so we've gone up. I think we've done a pretty good job going through the main player acquisitions. But there's sort of one. There's sort of a final, at least one more component to talk about, which is. I think it's so important. I was thinking about what we should do for today's show.
Yeah.
It is something I wanted to do. Like, it's something I really want to spend at least one show on. And so, and it's something we touched on early on, like maybe 4 or 5 episodes ago, when we started talking about Doug Young.
Yeah.
And so Doug Young so Doug Young, yep, we got him on the screen. So Doug Young, go back a little bit in time to when we first started introducing Doug Young. We talked about Doug Young as a defenseman. He's one of the guys that Jack Adams has identified as a core player for this team. He's identified this guy as a great player, as one of his like sort of 5 core guys. He's not trading Doug Young, but the problem with Doug Young is that Doug Young had yet to reach his potential.
Oh, okay.
And so Jack Adams, and so going into this season, he got Scotty Bowman as a defenseman. He knew he was pretty much set with Scotty. He was part of that $50,000 deal with Sid Young. He's got Doug Young, who is basically, and we're talking about the defenseman. He's looking as a defenseman, and he needs at least 4 solid defensemen for this, for this new team he's putting together. So he's got Scotty Bowman. This is new, like sort of, young addition, and then he's got Doug Young, who is good, but hasn't yet great. And he's got potential in Bucko. He has no idea what he's going to get with Bucko. He knows Bucko did great with the Olympics. On the NHL, though, it's another story. It's a complete mystery. This is Bucko. He's an exciting player, but they don't know how much they can actually rely on him.
Right.
And so, and then he's got basically an open slot for a fourth defender. And so we're going to talk about the two issues that we just mentioned here. The fourth slot for that defender, he needs a defenseman to fill that last slot. And he also needs Doug Young. He needs to figure out something to get Doug Young to play up to his potential. And so that's why we call this episode The Reluctant Star, because this is where the story begins. This is where we're trying to head into. So anyways, to start off, I want to read to you a quote. Okay. We usually don't start this early on with a quote, but I'm going to bring it on out. Yeah. So this is a quote about, this is Ebbie Goodfellow on October 14th, 1935. It was in the Detroit Times, and it was Frank McDonnell, who is the author of the article. And so this is the announcement of Ebbie Goodfellow as captain of the Detroit Red Wings. Okay.
You want to see that captain slot? Or
yeah, we can show. We can show. Yeah, that's fine. We can throw. That's cool right there. Yeah. So anyway, here is the quote for this. Ebenezer Ebbie Goodfellow will captain the 1934 edition of the Detroit Red Wings, manager Jack Adams announced last Saturday. Adams had this to say: Ebbie will be the captain as long as I am the manager. He is an ideal leader and has the confidence and respect of all the players. Now, this might just seem like a normal press release, okay? Just like this everyday average press release. But this right here is profoundly important to a series of dominoes, which I intend to introduce in the next little bit, and then over the course of this show.
Okay.
So I'm just going to repeat that just so we all know. I'm going to repeat Jack Adams's quote,
all right,
just for emphasis, okay? Ebbie will be the captain so long as I am the manager. He is an ideal leader and has the confidence and respect of all the players.
I like the look of this guy.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I love that picture. It's one of my favorites with Ebbie. You can actually see the reflection off the table with Ebbie, yeah. So he will be the captain as long as I'm the manager. That's the key thing to take of this, right? Quoted by Jack Adams. All right, so now I want to actually throw one more quote in here, right? So 5 cents, equally short. It's not going to. Right here. So Bob Murphy, the Detroit Times. This is March 4th, 1936. So he, meaning Ebbie Goodfellow, teams with Larry Orey and Herbie Lewis to form what Adams calls the Three Musketeers. Whenever any change of importance is made in the Red Wings plans or personnel, Adams always consults with these three men together with the team captain. Right. So two components to understand here. So actually we can throw up on the screen a list of the Red Wings captains here. All right. So this is beginning when they started with the Red Wings. When you go back to the Cougars and Falcons, there's a couple other guys that are not necessarily important to the story we're telling today. So beginning 1932-33, we have Larry Orey. That's the first captain. Then we have Herbie Lewis in 33-34. Those are the two guys we mentioned here as the Three Musketeers.
Yeah.
Right. And then notice in 34-35, we have Ebbie Goodfellow. All right. Just as the announcement. Okay. But this is where this is where we need to notice. 1935-36, we have Doug Young. Okay. And so pay attention to what I just said with that first quote. Ebbie will be the captain as long as I am the manager. Ebbie will be the captain as long as I am the manager. He said that in 34. Jack Adams did.
And then the next year, Doug Young's.
So what would make Jack Adams go back on a quoted newspaper source on so Ebbie Goodfellow is one of, if not the best players on the Red Wings. All right. He is a team captain, and he is one of the Three Musketeers, one of three. And that article with the Three Musketeers came out in 36. So that was after all this, the entire season. And so what would make Jack Adams go back on this determination that Ebbie, and you'll also notice that what's even also important to notice is you look at Doug Young. He's captain in this. We have a list of all the years with the captains.
Yeah.
Doug Young's captain for 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
And then you'll notice in 38-39, Ebbie Goodfellow picks right back up as the captain for 4 more years. And in 41-42, he ends up being captain with Sid Howe. So you see that. So there's this. So not only it's not so that first inclination is to think, at face value, one's to think, well, 34-35, what we're talking about, they had a bad year, right? And maybe Jack Adams was like, well, maybe Ebbie isn't the guy to lead this team as a captain.
Right.
But if that's the case, number one, he goes back on his word after he says he's the ideal leader. He's going to be my captain for life.
Yeah.
So he goes back on that. And also, if Ebbie was a bad captain, why did Adams reinstate him? Because Adams still the coach and general manager in 38, 39, all the way through the, what we said, like 65 or 67, whatever it was. Why would he reinstate him then?
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. So it doesn't make any sense. So the question, that's where, when you're looking into this, it's important for me to say this right now. What you are listening to right now, you, the listener at home, the viewer at home, what you're listening to right now does not exist anywhere else. What we are beginning to speculate now, the discussion we're going to have does not exist in any history book except for these. It doesn't exist in any radio show talk that you'll ever hear. It doesn't exist anywhere else except for right here in this show, because that's how much we care about this story, that we are willing to, we want to dive into this sort of mystery, because what I believe I've uncovered with this is, is the story of, the last missing link, one of the most important critical components of what ended up making this Red Wings team click. And also how and why Doug Young was the captain of the first Stanley Cup champion Red Wings team, how he became that. That's not insignificant. Yeah. And what's also insignificant is this idea that Ebbie Goodfellow his number is not retired by the Red Wings. And if you look at this list, I mean, this is sort of, we're going to get more deeper into it when we get to we're going to do a whole show on Ebbie Goodfellow. And if you look at this list, the Ebbie Goodfellow, if Ebbie Goodfellow had continued in a string of captaincy, it would be 8, he as it is, he had 5 years as the captain of the Red Wings. Mm-hmm. If Doug Young had not been captain for those 3 years, he would have had 8 years as captain of the Red Wings. That would have made him the third longest tenured captain in all of the Red Wings history. Yeah. And with that in mind, would the third longest tenured captain in Red Wings history, would that have been a good enough achievement for his number to be retired by the modern day Red Wings? Yeah. You see what I'm saying? Like this is an important, I believe this to be, a significant conversation to have, because once established about, I'll just get to it. The line of thought that I want to bring out is the idea that Ebbie Goodfellow willingly sacrificed his captaincy, and not only willingly sacrificed it, but there's a possibility that it might have even been his idea to sacrifice his captaincy to give it to Doug Young, because
to bring him up.
Because I'll read that. This is the next quote I want to read. Okay. So the issue, as I've raised already, like the reason why, here's 6 points.
And the captain's important. I mean, we just had a change in the captain here in the beginning of 2021. Yes. And it was like in the news for 5-6 days. Absolutely. 5-6 days a week. Absolutely. It was mentioned in the news in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah, well, this captaincy, this was mentioned in a newspaper, and the Red Wings were not exactly front page material. And this was an important thing even back then. It was a big deal about who the captain was. And so that's what I mean. Like, this is not.
So it's like a football. Football. It's like you got 10 captains on the field at one time. I think that's really watered down.
It is. And baseball too. Every once in a great while you have a captain in baseball, and it's still it's not nowhere near the same.
But in hockey, it's still, that C means
absolutely
a crap ton.
Steve Yzerman, his nickname is the captain, for God's sake. You know what I mean? Like that. That was one of the biggest things with Stevie Yzerman is, the captain, you know what I mean? And he was a tremendous captain. And it was a big deal now. And it was a big deal then.
Our speculation is that it might have very well been Ebbie's idea to do this, to bring Doug Young up. And you said you had a quote
because
there.
So here's the thing. So that was why I read the second quote, is that Adams, every time there's an issue of significance, he has the 3 musketeers, Ebbie Goodfellow, Larry Orey, and Herbie Lewis. Alongside whoever's the captain. All 3 of these men had been captains. That Herbie Lewis and Larry Orey had both been captains. And so, and he says any decision of any significance is going to be brought before this brain trust, the 3 musketeers, before the decision is made. Ergo, if here's whether it was Jack Adams' idea, nobody knows. This is the thing I need people to understand. No, there's no article that talks about why they did it.
I was going to say, did Adams address this?
He did not. That's what I'm saying. There was no, and that's what I'm saying. We have to use the evidence of the ensuing events to glean what the rationale for doing it, because he's not going to come out and say Doug Young doesn't believe he's a star, so we're going to make him a star, by forcing him to be captain.
Yeah.
He's not going to come out and say it because that's
right.
kind of, because now that actually lumps even more pressure on Doug Young and kind of makes him look, I don't know how great of a look that is.
Sure.
So he's not going to necessarily come out and say that. They're going to say, Doug, we have total confidence in you. But there is a little bit of evidence that can start us on the path towards understanding. And this is the quote that I want to get into. So this actually comes out. This is February of 1934. This is prior to that 34-35 season. It's like sort of at the, it's actually, I think it's at the tail end actually of the 33-34 season. So this right here, it says, so this talking about Doug Young, where he says, so anyways, it's a longer quote. So I'm going to glean out the most important section here. And this is Detroit Times dated February 4th, 1934, talking about Doug Young. He is, however, given to lapses, and it is when he has lighter moments that his play slips back into mediocrity, say the same observers. Because at the beginning it says, incidentally, Young is playing great hockey. And he's talking about how good he is, but then he says he is, however, given to lapses, and it is when he has his lighter moments that his play slips back into mediocrity, say the same observers. All right, so right there, it's just being, it's saying right there, they're, the newspapers are like these hype papers were like, these guys are great, they're amazing, whatever. And then he's like, however, he's got these moments where he's mediocre, totally mediocre. And now this is where I don't have a quote for the next sort of step in the process that, the reason why I say this reluctant star, but Doug Young, just over the volume of reading about, they're talking about years and years of reading about this. Okay. Years of reading about these players, years of reading about Adams. It's tough to like quantify, to put all the little pieces together. But what I'm saying is though that, Doug Young from the different, you're reading about these different games, you're reading about these different things. And there's this certain like deference of Doug Young to defer to other players, whether it's in interviews, like, even like when he's the captain, he still like defers like, oh, I didn't do anything. It was all these other guys.
Mm-hmm.
He's like sort of shy. And that's why, like, it is a sense that there is a certain conjecture in this. There is a certain speculation on my part. By no means is this definitive to say this. At the very least, it's a factual that viewers at this time are seeing that he has noticeable lapses in his play, that he's prone to, he's prone to, slips back into mediocrity. And that's what I'm saying. But I'm adding to that with just what I personally have read and what I feel in my bones was one of the reasons that they would do this, because it's a pretty drastic step to take a guy and say, oh, he's, he doesn't focus on the game, so we're going to make him a captain, so he's always has a focus. It seems like there's a missing component for the reason why. And it's a speculation, but I'm putting it out there that I believe, like I say, from what I've read about Doug Young, from what I've read about the situations in these games, that I believe it to be that reason, that sort of like the missing additional reason to these lacks, to these slides into mediocrity, as they say, is this idea that Doug Young didn't believe he was necessarily a star alongside all these other guys. And so that's what I'm saying. So this is like I say, this is where this is where I'm going with this. That's what I'm putting out there as far as the reason why. So but there's no doubt. So that being said, I've got several quotes that will actually acknowledge what ended up happening with Doug Young once he became captain. And that's also where we can factor in, what happened, the results of him becoming captain.
Spoiler alert.
Yes. Yeah. Spoiler. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So I want to read to you. So the quotes of talking about like after he becomes captain also sort of shed light. And I think to help enhance what I'm saying about, this didn't believe, in his superstardom. So I'm going to read a couple of these quotes to show what he was talking about here. And so, all right. So, right here. Okay, right here. So talking about Doug Young, and this quote comes from 1936. So this is March 27th, 1936. So this is towards the end of the season.
Right.
All right. So I believe this is like right at the tail end of the season. So it says, responsibilities of leadership have aroused him to magnificent efforts. In the public print, you naturally read more about the bouncing Buckle McDonald than Doug Young, his partner on defense. Anyways, that's I don't want to get too any further than that. But right here, being named captain of the Red Wings set some kind of a spark in the manly bosom of Doug Young. He has played as one inspired during the greater part of the campaign. Responsibilities of leadership have aroused him to magnificent efforts.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted to get right there. So they acknowledge right here that being named captain of the Wings has set some kind of a spark in the manly bosom of Doug Young. That right there,
and that's exactly what Adams wanted.
That's what I'm saying. Like when they say setting a spark in the manly bosom, that's not he's prone to laxes on just on concentration. You know what I mean? Like. Back then, if they would have had like Adderall, if that would have helped him focus a little more, he would have been fine. They would have needed to give him the captaincy. No, they're saying right here, it's spark in the manly bosom of Douglas Young, meaning it empowered him. You see what I'm saying? This is the kind of language that they use, and I'll read another one. So, like I say, the way that they talk about it. So,
yeah.
So anyways, so here's right. It says. So right here, Doug Young, captain of the Wings, was ranked by leading observers as the #1 defenseman of hockey for the 1935-36 season. Young accepted the responsibilities of leadership like a great general. His play improved to such extent that he was an inspiration to his mates. He never slackened the pace during the entire campaign, moving always to where the fight was thickest. That was Bob Murphy, Detroit Times, April 13th, 1936. So anyways,
you're good.
You're good, sir. So right there, like we say, so Young. So once again, they're pointing once again that it was the transfer of leadership, the transfer of responsibility that elevated him to the next level.
Yeah,
you see. And so I want to give an example here too. This is another little quote. So this is an example of the type of So this is actually Doug Young in a game, right? I just love this quote here because this is Doug Young actually in the thick of the game, and they're sort of talking about what it is. So, anyways, Doug Young probably did. This article comes out. This is April 8th, 1936, by Bob Murphy, the Detroit Times. So, Doug Young probably did more yelling on the ice during the latter part of last night's game than he has his entire hockey career. Come on, gang. Hold him. Watch out, Larry. Attaboy, Normie. Come back fast, fellows. The Wings captain was playing as one inspired, but also bellowing out orders like a general on a war-stricken battlefield. One by one, newspapermen and the chosen few fans who managed to gain admittance to the dressing room filed by to shake the hand of Captain Doug Young. And so I have one more, and this is like my final. This is the exclamation point. It's actually the very next paragraph. It's the exclamation point on this entire thing. So talking about Jack Adams, the same Adams declared emphatically that making Doug Young captain had caused Doug Young to find himself. This has been his greatest season, and what a season. So definitively making him the captain of this team is, by all accounts, is by numerous different accounts, different writers, including Jack Adams himself, acknowledges is the transference of that captaincy onto Doug Young is what raised his game to a level where, they're saying he's the #1 defender in the entire NHL.
Okay.
Right. And so, like I say, it is definitive that whether it, the reason was specifically as I am saying, that it was because Doug Young didn't believe he was a star, which I think I've just given a couple, glances of ideas that it was, or it was just as simple as he was losing focus, whatever the reason was. It is acknowledged in all these quotes here that the transference of that leadership of the captaincy is what made him raise that game to that next level. And so the long and short of it is what an incredible psychological move. Yeah. By Adams, by Ebbie Goodfellow, by the Three Musketeers. This is an incredibly important, it's an incredibly unique component to the story that the Ebbie Goodfellow would transfer that captaincy. They would transfer this to Doug Young like this, and it would talk about today in the modern day sports. Would a player today look at go, I want to transfer my captaincy to somebody else for because I think it's going to raise their game. Yeah. That's unheard of. Oh no, that's unheard of. Yeah. And so, at least I've never heard of a story like that. And so So that's to say, so like Ebbie Goodfellow sacrifices that component of his legacy where he's not the captain for 8 years, as Jack Adams had promised, had said, he's the captain as long as I'm here.
Yeah.
As long as he's here and as long as I'm here, Ebbie Goodfellow is it. And we heard a quote last week from Bucko where he said Ebbie Goodfellow is the ideal of what all hockey players should be. I mean, Ebbie Goodfellow was a revered player at this time. And so in one more component of this, and this is what I want to add this, because as we say at the beginning here, is this idea that they needed a fourth defenseman. And this is where Ebbie steps in again. Ebbie Goodfellow, who's one of the top scoring forwards of the NHL his entire career.
Yeah.
Ebbie Goodfellow becomes a defenseman in 1935. He switches over from a forward. He's never played defenseman in his entire career. I mean, he knows how to play hockey, of course, but he's not necessarily known for his defensive abilities as a forward. He's known as a scorer and as a bruiser. And then Adams needs him to become a defenseman. And so here's the thing. Anybody that's looking at Ebbie Goodfellow with a modern pair of eyes that doesn't understand the context, and I just want to throw this out there too. Ebbie Goodfellow not only became, I can see we're going to go to more Ebbie when we get a chance to really focus on him.
Yeah.
He became one of the best defensemen in all of hockey in 1935. He was the Red Wings' only All-Star in 1935.
Oh, okay.
And he went as a defenseman. Yeah. All right. And then a few years later,
star forward going as a defenseman.
And he stayed as a defenseman the rest of his career.
Okay.
And he ended up a few years later, becoming an MVP of the NHL as a defenseman. All right. And when you actually look at all the records for scoring in that, he's like one of the top scoring defensemen in the NHL year after year after this. And so anybody that's looking at Ebbie Goodfellow, this is one of the importance of this entire story. Okay. Is that anybody that looks at Ebbie Goodfellow and says, and they look at his stats and they're looking at whether he should be considered for the Red Wings, his numbers should be retired, which is the highest number. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
His numbers, he's in the Red Wings Hall of Fame.
Sure.
But his number's not retired. His numbers that should be in the rafters of Little Caesars Arena.
Yeah.
Goodfellow next to the 35. There's none of these players' names are up in the rafter, and he richly deserves it. His entire career was there. He was developed by the Detroit Olympics, which was the team prior. He played with the Cougars, the Falcons. He started out with the Olympics. He's one of the best players in the NHL. He's a Hall of Famer. But all of a sudden now it starts to break down. Anybody that's modern day looking back at Ebbie Goodfellow's record and they're like, well, how many times was he captain? Well, 5 times he was captain. That's pretty good. No, well, if you remove if you add in the potential context of his story, he was a captain for potentially 8 years. The only reason he wasn't captain for potentially 8 years is because he sacrificed the captaincy to get Doug Young to play to a higher level.
And see, you got to know he was coaching and mentoring as captain. And, as a second captain.
Exactly. That's another picture I want to show. If we got anybody that's watching this, throw that picture up with the where he's walking up that stairway.
What?
Yeah, I sent you a picture where he's got there we go.
The playoffs.
Yes. So this is I got a photo up on the screen here for anybody that's listening. This is one of my favorite pictures. And we may have already shown this already, but this is a full-size picture of it. I think we might have showed it in a little corner of when we were introducing Ebbie. But this picture shows right here. This photo was taken during game 3 of the 1935-36 playoffs against the Montreal Maroons. And they were walking I forgot if it was either from the locker room or to the locker room. But anyways, it's like a small platoon of soldiers walking somewhere.
Yeah.
And you can see that they're in order. And Ebbie Goodfellow is at the front. He is the guy walking in the front of this team. And so despite the fact that Doug Young was the captain, they looked at Ebbie as he was the guy. And and this picture is it's one of my absolute favorite pictures from the books. Because it's like these guys this is a moment in time. They're they don't know they're about to be Stanley Cup captains or champions or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're just like this is a random reporter to snap this shot, and Ebbie is leading this procession. And that's not random. This is not you can see just from the way they're walking, the way they're moving down this tunnel. This is not random that Ebbie Goodfellow is in the front of that line, and it's not random that they put that in the paper either. And that's what I mean. Like, the captaincy didn't necessarily matter to Ebbie. They all knew he was the leader. Yeah. They all knew that. And even Doug Young, even when you're reading I got a ton of quotes from Doug Young in the book, and it raised his game. Absolutely. But it didn't take away from Ebbie. He didn't need that C to be a leader. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't need. It's like a general doesn't need the epaulets on his shoulders because he's the leader. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He, like these, like the best leaders in the world, they don't need decorations or whatever. They lead by action and who they are, and that's what I'm saying. Like, anybody. That's why this. I guess once again, why this story I wanted to emphasize this for give it an entire episode is because. There's no doubt that that Ebbie, like if he could have and probably should have been captain for 8 years,
right? And
without that context of that story, anybody that's just looking at it as like a statistic, they're like, oh, he was captain for 5 years, that's pretty good. Without the 3, and also
there's a story there
exactly, so. and also which is the secondary component. Is that Ebbie Goodfellow became a defenseman. So anybody that's looking at the stats and they look at like the first 5 years of his career where Ebbie's like just lighting up the red lamps. And and a lot of times, a lot of sources, when you look up Ebbie Goodfellow, it lists him as a forward, it lists him as a center, it lists him as a forward, right? And so they look at his goal scoring numbers and they just watch him sort of go down over the course of his career. But the problem is that defensemen, as the name implies, they're not on the attack. They don't score anywhere near as many goals. Right. But if you actually compare his goals as a defenseman to these other defensemen of his era, he's blowing them out of the water.
Right.
You see? And so that's what I'm saying. He's listed as a forward, but that's what I'm saying. Like this era is so detached from us. We don't know any of these stories. And by putting him in this proper context, you see this special player that emerges. It's like, this is what it's like to me. It's like, I mean, Ebbie was like the Gordie Howe or the Steve Yzerman of his era. And imagine for anybody that's watched Steve Yzerman or watched Gordie Howe today, imagine if Gordie Howe's number was not up in the rafters of Little Caesars Arena. It would be insane.
Yeah.
It would be insane.
Yeah.
And this is insane.
Okay.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay? This is insane because Ebbie, spoiler alert, Ebbie goes on to become this incredible defenseman for the Wings. Yeah. He's he's the guy that they need.
Well, we got a lot of people to talk to. We got to fix the whole Cochran mess.
We got a whole pile, man.
Now we got to fix the Goodfellow.
We got
mess.
A major mess to fix with Ebbie, man. A major mess. And like the other guys, you could make it say, with the 3 Musketeers, all 3 of those Musketeers there you go. Larry Ori, his number actually was retired and it never was actually hung up. It was hung up in Olympia, but it was not hung up when they moved over to Joe Louis, which is the most craziest thing I've ever heard. How can it be retired by Adams and Jim Norris? The number's retired by them. And I mean, it was actually framed and put in the concourse. It was nobody's ever going to wear that number again for Larry Ori. And then in number 6, nobody's going to wear the number again. And so that number is retired, but it never has come over. And then, like I say, Adams has got this 3 Musketeer group, and how like I'm trying to say, like the 3 Musketeers, Ori, Lewis, and Goodfellow, their numbers should be retired absolutely. And Ebbie Good, like I say, even if you want to say Herbie Lewis, well, he didn't have as big of a name, he wasn't as captain as long as Ebbie. If you want to, but Ebbie absolutely his numbers should be retired. And I'm not ever until my dying day. I'm not gonna until somebody makes until somebody can make any type of a case that is even remotely that goes against what I have to say about it, or what this what I presented, then it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so, anyways, so Ebbie Goodfellow switches to defenseman. He gives up his captaincy to Doug Young. And so he solves this problem that, now, so this is what they get out of this deal is they get an elite defenseman in Doug Young with the best defenseman in the NHL. Yeah. They get Ebbie Goodfellow as a defenseman who is becomes one of, if not the best in the NFL, but he's certainly one of the best scoring defensemen in the NFL or the NHL. Yeah. And now they got their 4 guys. And so the way that the sort of the rotation worked out is that Doug Young would be paired with Bucko McDonald. And that's what we actually have a picture here. If you want to flip it to, so this is the little quartet. We got a photo on the screen with all 4 of the Red Wings defensemen. This is their quartet. These are the 4 guys that are going to play every single game. All the games that the Red Wings play, I think it was 48. 40, like they play all the games. They don't, all 4 of them. There's no other defensemen they use. It's just these 4 guys.
Oh my God.
Yes. These guys are total beasts. And they're all 4 of them. And the rotation is going to be, the pairs are going to be, it's going to be Doug Young and Bucko McDonald. Okay. And then Scotty Bowman and Ebbie Goodfellow. And so the way that it worked is the reason for the pairings was Bucko McDonald is just raw. We've already talked about Bucko was super raw, super aggressive, and he was balanced off with like the elite Doug Young, who could basically cover up for the mistakes of Bucko. And I also think that helped Doug Young too, because it gave him like a whole like a lackey to or like a student to really it actually forced him into that role even more so, where he's like gotta like.
Because Bucko came in, right? He was the lacrosse guy.
Yes.
And it's like, oh wait, let's put him on skates. See what happens. And this was like when he played for the Wings. It was like his third game he ever played, or something ridiculous like that.
When he first started with the Olympics, when he came over from Buffalo from the Maple Leafs. He was mad because he didn't get into any games with the Buffalo, and so they so he
needed molding. So that captain that probably helped him be a better be a better captain.
It's exactly that's what I'm saying. It actually gave him a guy, like if he would have been partnered with Ebbie or with Scotty Bowman, Scotty Bowman was like, I don't need any tips from you. He might not. I'm not saying he would have said like that, but But with a raw bones rookie, especially when it's like, hey Doug, when are we gonna go hit today? He's like Bucko's got this like naivete, he's going. Bucko's like, hey Doug, I'm gonna go hit the guy.
Steaks.
Bucko's like, I'm gonna go hit that guy. Okay, Doug. And Doug's like, okay, I got your back. I'll cover whatever loose end puck gets by you. Doug. That was so it kind of gave Doug an actual sort of a protege. A guy that he actually felt comfortable with too. So that's another aspect.
And
of
so
it
what
too.
was the other pairing?
So the other pairing is Scotty Bowman and Ebbie Goodfellow. And so with that lineup. With that sort of with that grouping, you've got Scotty Bowman, who's been a defenseman for his whole career, and he's also a solid, good defenseman. And he's not really known as a big scoring defenseman. Scotty Bowman, only scored a couple of goals every year, but then he's paired and he's paired with Ebbie, who is a scoring defenseman, as we mentioned, and likewise with Bucko and Doug. Bucko was never really a scorer except for in the playoffs when he just has seasons worth of goals. But Doug Young was actually Doug was a fantastic defenseman. He was a great offensive defenseman. He was a great defensive defenseman. So that gave scoring punch to both of those defensive lines as well. Yeah. And so it was a perfect balance. The only thing that was wrong with it, I was going to kind of say this for next week, but it's not going to take long to go to, is the idea that Scotty Bowman is that Ebbie Goodfellow and Scotty Bowman love to both fight. They love to fight. They love to get in fights and hit people and stuff. And it led to a ton of penalty minutes for both of them. And so the problem was, especially after the first couple games of the season, when both Ebbie Goodfellow and Scotty Bowman are both in the penalty box, it's not hard for Ed.
You only got only two other defensemen.
They got so that the other guys got to work hard. But I mean, they're two guys short or whatever. There was actually a couple of moments where both of his defense on his line are both in the box. And so he's like, no, we can't have this. And so
one gets in a fight and there's one, I'm going to finish it for him.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing. Like, so both guys would be in the box. So you got both your defensemen there. And so he actually commanded, he basically told Scotty Bowman, he was like, listen, I've been trying to temper Ebbie for years, and that's never going to happen. I'm never going to get Ebbie to stop fighting. And we actually kind of need him to keep fighting because he's a total beast. And he's got these rivalries with Johnny Gottselig of the Blackhawks and Red Horner from the Blue, Maple Leafs. He's like kind of like your Bob Probert. He's a total, he's like I say, Ebbie's a scorer. He's not just a pure muscle guy, fighter, but he was like probably their best fighter. Ebbie was. And so that's why he's like, I can't stop Ebbie from fighting. But so Scotty, you're going to have to not, and that's an entire story unto itself is Scotty Bowman, in like his, him having to take on this, like not fight, even though that was totally part of his game was fighting and stuff. So that was the one sort of weak link in that armor. And they were able to, they would overcome it. And these four defensemen would play together for the next 2 years, and they would be the core group of four guys that would win, not, spoiler alert, not only the 1935 championship for Detroit, but the following one as well.
Okay.
These are the four guys that would be back to back. This was the pairing. We've got this great photo on the screen where all four of them are singing. They call it the quartet. They're all singing together. And then the bottom, I've got this great picture, what I totally love, which is Doug Young and Bucko McDonald, and they're standing in front of Normie Smith.
Yeah.
Yep. So, Yeah, so that's pretty much what I wanted to get to.
Well, let me throw a challenge out there.
Yeah, throw it out.
So 1935, City of Champions, 33 championships in 1935. But we're talking about the Red Wings, the 35-36 year.
Yes.
So has anybody called you on that to say, no, it's the Wings didn't win the championship in 35. They won it in 36.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. The people, they'll throw that out there because it wasn't the same year.
So how do you call that?
Well, it all happened within a 7-month stretch.
Okay.
I mean, it's like dominoes, like a 7.
Right.
This whole everything we're talking about happened within a 7-month
within
a 7-month stretch. Yeah.
So and the hockey season split.
Yeah.
So is it 34-35? Is it 35-36?
Exactly. There's no possible way. Yeah. I mean, unless you have to win it.
Hockey fluctuates across the year.
Yeah. So it was within it. I usually say within a 12-month span.
Right.
Within a 12-month span, all of this. If it happens within a 12-month span, that's within the same year.
Sure. So most of it happened within 7 months.
That's what I'm saying. Within a 7-month stretch of time.
Can you imagine?
The Tigers do it in October 7th. The Lions do it on December 15th, and the Red Wings do it on April 13th. I mean, it's within a incredibly short period of time.
Can you imagine how crazy the city would be today with 3?
Exactly.
But
and Jamie, what I'm saying is that one of the things I got interested in with this story. Yeah, that's a great song. I love that song. Yeah, I do. I love that. I totally love that song. It's like the song that it gets stuck in my head every once in a while, and I love that when it does. But anyways, just one of the things I got really interested in with the story, the further I got into it, was the idea of like team building, because all these teams. All this stuff happened in the formative years of Detroit sports. I mean, the Lions are born in 34.
Yeah.
The Red Wings are only so named in 33, 32, 30. They're only named in they've only been the Red Wings for a handful of years.
Yep.
And so these are the formative years of these sports. The Tigers had never won a World Series. I mean, they've been around. The Tigers were the oldest franchise in the city,
right?
But they never won a World Series, and certainly the state of Michigan had not truly embraced the Tigers the way that we see it today. Not until 35 did that thing happen. So these are the formative years of these teams, and I got really interested in the idea of team building, building teams. Yeah. What does it like? Why do some cities retain their teams? Why do some teams become such beloved by their city,
right?
And then other teams don't even last a year.
Yeah,
there's many.
Sell you to Vegas.
Yeah, well, they get relocated. Yeah, they get relocated. I mean, it's been true. There's been thousands of teams throughout the course of sports history in general for all these different cities that leave, that don't ever why did the Green Bay Packers, they have I don't even know how big their city is, but if you look at a population list of all the cities with NFL teams,
sure,
it's microscopic compared to every other team.
Yeah.
Why did they survive?
And their fervor is
it's insane. It's sold out every game.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
In 2 feet of snow, it's sold out.
That's what I'm saying. Why is it that in cases people are well, it's because they have a large population, and it's because they do this. It's because no, it's not as as formulaic as that. You can't. You can have a big city, and not necessarily a team is not necessarily going to attach itself to the community. And that's what I really got into with all this stuff. That's why we talk about the importance of the rivalries. That's why we talk about guys like Bucko McDonald who become fan favorites and endear these people. That's why we say, that's why we say when these teams are by the Red Wings, it was important for them to win at the same time as the Tigers or Lions, because they knew they had to stay relevant. They had to stay relevant. They had to win at this exact time. And so one of the things I talk about, you say, imagine how exciting it would be today if these teams won. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is that, Jamie, what I've found from reading through these things is that there is, they talk about those that study history, those that don't remember their history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah.
But I follow a more hopeful line of thought, which is that those that understand their history, understand where they came from, understand the lessons of the past, can duplicate the lessons of the past, or can stand on the shoulders of those that came before them and reach for something greater, can replicate that past. And that's what I'm telling you. This is what I'm saying. What I found in these stories and a lot of these things is that it is entirely possible for Detroit to do something incredible once again.
Right.
And there's so many different learning lessons from this story that they were able to tap into to make it a reality. And what I'm saying is, I'm saying this without any I mean, this is like, I'm saying this straight to the camera. I was looking right in the camera. It is entirely possible for the city to replicate the City of Champions story, for a city to dominate in a way that no city has ever seen before. There's no, like I say, there's lessons to be gleaned from this. And in one of these days, once this story comes out and the people actually start talking about this and saying, my God, I can't, it's not just a bar trivia question, that this is something that actually returns to the mainstream world of Detroit sports, that the anniversary is remembered, that Ebbie Goodfellow's name is hung in the rafters, that Mickey Cochran's number is hung up, in all these different things.
Yes.
And once we start getting it, diving deeper into this and seeing what they did right and understanding where we came from, then we're going to be able to do it again. That's what I'm saying. And so anybody that's listening to this and tired of seeing their teams lose, guess what? I got some things that's going to help our modern day teams. Tell these people that run these teams to watch the City of Champions podcast, right? Tell them.
Absolutely. And we want to thank you. Yeah, we do want to thank everybody who hangs out with us. We truly appreciate it. There's a nice little posse of folks that chime in and say hi throughout the broadcast.
Awesome.
And
we got some viewers. I love
while
them.
We're live, and then
people, man. Yeah.
John Howell said hi today.
It's my dad. How you doing, Dad?
And then so it's cool. It's so if you're listening and you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. Leaving a comment would be a beautiful thing, and that'd be pretty cool as well. And we appreciate you here. What I appreciate is Tom, and
Tom's got a did you know for us. I'm guessing. I'm totally guessing. He did not tell us what the did you know was before the show started.
Yeah, so Tom.
Nor did he let me choose which did you know I was going to think.
I got a whole list of them here. Which one do we want?
So I
thought we already picked one.
Well, we did.
Did you know with Tom?
Well, did you know that in 1960, July the 4th, that a young person, 8 years old, went over the big Niagara Falls? And how do I know? Because I was there.
Oh,
I was the last one in the Cave of the Winds with a raincoat on.
Were you in the barrel, or were you watching them?
I turned around and I looked at the Maid of the Mist. That's the boat that goes up into the falls. And I said, my goodness gracious, somebody fell off the boat, because they were all on one side. They had a big net. I just couldn't imagine that somebody fell off the boat. Little did I ever think that somebody would go over the falls.
The falls, yeah.
So I told my friend ahead of me, it was in high school, Larry, he would pass it up the line and everybody stopped. And then you took the elevator up to return your raincoat, and they were all hubbubbing on the boy that went over the falls. And what happened was that there was a father, and his older sister was 14. He was 8. And they, on the Niagara River, they stopped the boats. And for some reason, his boat went through the weir, and his daughter was thrown out, and he was thrown out, and the little boy was thrown out, because the Niagara River is one of the fastest rivers in the world. That 18 or 19 miles an hour current.
Oh.
And so the girl got over to the American Horseshoe, and they got her out.
You ain't doggy paddling against it.
Supposedly they never found his father, but the little boy had a life preserver on, and they figured that when he went down, he was buoyed between two big mammoth rocks, and he bounced back up, and somebody spotted him on the Maid of the Mist, and they plucked him out. He was 8 years old.
And he survived, though, right?
He survived.
Yeah. That's crazy.
On July the 4th, he had quite a bang, I must have told you.
Like, can you imagine that kid the rest of his life? Like, I went over the falls. They're like, what? They're like, he's like, I survived. They're like,
body surfed over the falls.
I got another quick story that I want to throw in with the Niagara Falls. Is anybody that's not heard this name before? Ed Delahanty. Ed Delahanty was basically he was sort of like the Babe Ruth of his day. He was a star from the late 1800s, early 1900s. And Big Ed Delahanty is one of my absolute favorite baseball players of all time. Big Ed Delahanty. And anyways, he died on the fall over going to the falls. Oh, he was taking a train. He was taking a train to a game in Detroit. He was playing for Washington Nationals at the time. And Washington Americans, because he played with the American League team at that point. I think it was 1902 or 1903. It was the first couple of years of the American League. And they were taking a train to Detroit, and he got drunk on the train and was getting all angry, and the conductor threw him off the train. and nobody knows. He was wandering by. There was a security guard near the falls or such and such, and he nobody knows if it was an argument that he got in with the guy because he was so drunk he got kicked off the train. And so so there was like nobody knows if it was an argument with the security guard at whatever lookout or overlook that was there. Nobody knows exactly what happened, but they found him like a couple of days later, dead from the grit. It's
Wow.
Delahanty. I mean, imagine that whole thing. The best baseball player, one of the best baseball players in the country, goes over the falls. I mean, it's still a mystery to this day that nobody really knows exactly what happened. But
jeez,
sad ending to a tremendous player. Yeah,
it's a challenge. That's a beautiful falls.
Yeah, I've never seen it. I've never seen the Niagara Falls. I would love it. I've seen the Grand Canyon. I haven't seen the Niagara Falls.
Niagara Falls.
Have you seen it, JD? You've been there?
So no, I've never.
It's well worth the trip to see that.
The road trip with the City of Champions podcast to the Niagara Falls. Let's make it happen. It might be a little loud.
Get my water wings on before I get anywhere too close to that.
Okay, yeah, get it done.
Tom, look what happened, man.
Yep.
It zipped right past.
It just, where does it go? Sorry, I'm not telephone call, but
no, you're good. You're good. Yeah, your lady friend is, you got to keep an eye on her. So. And I don't mind your phone rings. Otherwise, if it was Charles, I'd be yelling at.
I've already gave Jamie a bunch of grief about it one day because your phone buzzed one day. And I gave you. I was like unprofessional.
Well, I gave a warning because I got this lady. She's
yeah. You're good, man. No, you're good. We accepted that warning.
Well, the ring the bell. Lewis's bell.
Yeah, no, you're good, man.
That's it. All right. So Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. It's the website, DetroitCityOfChampions.com, and on Facebook, and get merch there and books and
I'm about to come out with some new hoodies and stuff, t-shirts and stuff, because I've got a black. If you come into the stores, we're in 12 Oaks Mall, Novi,
sweet,
Partridge Creek, Clinton Township. I'm actually in those stores quite a bit, and but with this, we've got some pretty cool merch with the black hoodies, black t-shirts with the red text.
Okay,
and we're about to put out some dark blue ones with white text on them, so it's kind of like tiger color, tiger, look. So
I like it.
Yep. So,
all right, Detroit City of Champions, the podcast. We'll see you next time.